Hello, everyone. I'm Tori.
And I'm Tim.
And I'm John.
And this is the Stuck Together podcast.
Episode 15.
With a special guest, Tim's twin. No, I'm kidding. Just brother.
She thinks we look the same.
You guys look so much alike. It's crazy.
I'm sure to everyone not in our family watching this, we do look identical.
You look a lot alike. Just saying. But,
well, people will tell us that our voices sound similar, but I don't know.
That one, not as much, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, not quite
You
as
guys
much.
have pretty distinct voices.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think so. Yeah. No,
Well, it's
I
kind of
think
like
so.
my mom and her sister. Everyone like mistakes them for each other and is like, you guys look like twins. And to me, they look literally nothing alike because I've known them my whole life. I'm like,
Right.
there's no way. Like,
Yeah.
But-
Well, John, introduce yourself.
Yes, I am John McClung. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, where Tim has also lived in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I am 28 years old. I have 2 dogs. You've got
Show the
one up
dogs.
there.
Yes.
That's Yoshi, our golden doodle. And then
Hi,
you've
Yoshi.
got... Okay, you're not going to see it. Oh, there he is. Can you see him?
Is he
Barely.
Yeah.
He blends
Anyway,
in.
yeah.
cute?
Great. Yeah,
Anything
so
else you want to...
no, I know plenty about you. It's whatever you want to share. No, but we do want to know more about you because that's why we're having you on the show. And real quick, I'm sure we're going to get off on tons of tangents, which is totally fine. But I remembered that you had these questions from your email. Viewers and listeners will remember that when we read John's email, he had questions in it.
Yes.
And so now we can ask the questions.
Yeah.
The first one that I want to ask is, why are cars the problem and how do we fix it? The other ones are personal and they're like, what's it like growing up? I want to know what the cars, there's no context for that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I try to remember to ask everyone before we start, or I'm gonna try. What do you do in life? Like, what do you do for work? And what are your hobbies? And do they match up at all?
Okay, yeah, good question. So I am a software developer. I work for a consulting company here in Nashville, and it's a good fit for something to do for a living, but because I do it all week, I don't do it in my free time at all. For hobbies, I want to do anything where I'm not, at a computer, pretty much. So
Fair enough.
I do a lot of gardening.
Really? I couldn't tell by your background.
Yes, I have some of my houseplants in here with me, but
Are those
we
real?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
We have basically taken our entire front yard and ripped out almost all of the grass. We have one little patch that's still grass, and then everything else, we've planted like 40 trees in the 2 years that we've been at this house. And so, love gardening. I like cycling and other stuff like that.
Very nice. Awesome. Do you road cycle, or do you like cycle in places where cars are not?
My favorite place to cycle is the Nashville Greenway, and so there's no cars allowed. And
Love that.
it's covered in trees. The trees are my favorite, honestly.
Yeah.
And which, it all loops back into the whole like cars thing. Honestly, I could probably talk about that for hours and hours and hours. I'll try to give you the short version because that's you didn't sign up for that. But basically, I am very passionate about having fewer cars on the road. I think the big problem with America today is that the default way to get anywhere is a car. And depending
True.
on where you live, it may be the only realistic way to get somewhere. And what that leads to is everybody drives everywhere. And when everybody drives, not only does that create a lot of pollution, it also makes it, unsafe for people who aren't driving, right? If you're on a bike, you are maybe just kind of on the side of the road and cars are going around you, you don't have any dedicated safe place to go. And so the only people who bike are really adventurous, people who are willing to take their lives into their own hands. And so then But also, yeah, you have congestion and you have situations where because everybody has to drive a car, you have these ginormous parking lots, and then you have all of this land that's not used efficiently. And again, it just forces everybody back into a car because everybody's driving. And it's yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a little bit on the podcast with Hunter, how it sucks because we literally can't walk anywhere. Like we have like one little shopping center that we can walk to, and it has like a liquor store and a Goodwill, and that's it. The rest of everything is like we have to drive. And yeah, I've looked into a lot of that too with, you know, kind of the just all the parking lots and how much of our country is literally just parking lots and like, you know, roads and all of that instead of, you know, other places to be in like natural areas and all of that. So I totally understand. Yeah, that just the question, for some reason I liked seeing it as a very ominous question, like cars were like evil and or something. I don't know.
Why are cars the problem?
Well, and cars separate people because when everybody has to walk everywhere, then you actually interact with people and you know your neighbors and you have community. And when you're driving across town for everything, you don't have to interact with another human if you don't want to. And so then in some ways it's really convenient, but in other ways it makes us really lonely. And yeah. And then you want to live in a walkable area. And like, you know, my wife and I were like, oh, we really care about walkability now. We should live somewhere walkable. Well, you're going to pay through the nose for it because it's pretty much illegal to build walkable places in a lot of the country because you have all these legal requirements about, well, you have to have a front yard that's at least this big, and you have to have this many parking spaces at such and such building, and you can't build an apartment complex in this location because it's not zoned for that. It's zoned for single family homes maybe or whatever. And so, yeah, it all circles back. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, I think there's like a double-edged sword of like having cars. Like obviously, the only intention of making cars was to like make horses better, and like so you know now we have all this technology that developed and everything because we were able to drive places and move things faster, and you know that is what it is. But now it's created. Because I totally agree with everything you're saying. I haven't thought of it like that before, but totally on board. It makes me think of, is it Florence in Italy, where the city was like designed with people in mind. The courtyards in the middle were supposed to be close enough that moms could yell down at their kids and tell them to come back and keep an eye on them. And like art was like totally installed everywhere in the city. And like it was designed with like people in mind, you know? So totally makes me think of that. But yeah, it's like we have cars, they're great, but they also are bad. So, but it's like you said, there's not like a good solution of like, how do we get, because, you know, people aren't going to, I mean, like, the other thing is, like, am I supposed to get a job that's walkable? Because then the amount of jobs I could get go way down. And if I have to take, like, a tram to work, like, right now in another city over in Denver, we're in Golden. So if I have to take a tram, like, I don't want to do that. But, you know.
Well, they say that civilized country is one where people take public transportation, basically. Because if you go to like Switzerland or something, it doesn't matter if you are like a CEO, you're probably going to take public transportation to get to your job. Because, even in like America, people say, oh, America, it wasn't built for the car. Or it was built for the car, but it wasn't. It was bulldozed for the car because basically every city in America, even if it was like a town of like 1,000 people, it had a train station in it, and they tore it down. And so we had connectivity, and we could have built faster trains. Like in France, you can get anywhere in the country in like an hour or something because they have high-speed trains going between all the different cities. I'm sure that's an exaggeration, but you get the idea, right? And so, but because everyone drives a car, there's no political will to improve public transportation. And so then public transportation is horrible. And so then no one takes it unless they have to. And then you don't have anyone taking it, and so they don't want it improved. And so, yeah. But I think basically the path forward to fixing it is obviously, first of all, awareness. And as more people move to walkable areas because they're desirable, eventually people will pick up on that and realize like we can make a lot of money if we build more of these. So then that's where you're going to start getting the developers lobbying to be able to build them so that they can make money off of it. And yeah, but it'll be a long time. If to any listeners who are like, I want to learn more about this, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. Not Just Bikes is extremely popular. There's another one that is a bit less condescending in its tone called Oh, the Urbanity. It's a couple from Montreal, and they're just super friendly, and I really love like the tone that they strike with all of their stuff.
Yeah. The first thing I thought of when we were talking about, hopefully more cities are developed like that and everything, I thought about how, like, I wonder if, like, petroleum's gonna let that happen,
That's the other thing.
Because it's like, well, and I mean, I guess car companies too. Both of them. I feel like that's, like, the biggest hurdle is, like, how do we get them to, like, not, force it to not happen? Because they tend to do that with literally everything. But yeah, once I would just love that. And I know that you're more likely to have like a third space when you're in a walkable city. So like not work and not home, but like a bookstore or a bar or a restaurant or just a park that you go to or like you and your friends go to and everything. Because, when you live somewhere like we live where you can't really walk anywhere, it's like I get home from work and I'm like, I do not want to get in my car again. Like, I don't want to drive anywhere anymore, And so, yeah, if you can like walk places, it's like, let's just go. Like with we do have a Mexican restaurant that's like close enough to walk to. And it's been like super fun going there, because we're like, oh, we can just walk. But yeah.
Yeah.
I support it.
If we could get big business out of American politics, I mean, we would solve so many problems. It's not even funny.
Aren't they the same thing? Am I right? Am I right? Well, yeah, I could also talk about that forever. I'm going back and forth between why is a 12-point scale better than a 10-point scale?
Okay, yeah. So I can explain this. Basically, first, I'll start with a 4-point scale. A 4-point scale is an alternative to a 5-point scale. Like you might rate something 5 stars, right?
Okay.
So the problem with a 5-star scale is that no one ever uses 2 stars. It's pretty common. If you see the ratings, there's like maybe a lot of 5s, some 4s, a few 3s, and a bunch of 1s, but like no 2s. Well, why is that? I think it's because it's too many numbers. And if you think about, humans, we're not great at big numbers. If I ask you to picture like 1.2 million of something versus picturing 1.8 million of something, like you don't know how many that is. And it's kind of the same with like 5. 5 is a little bit too big. And so if you're going to pick, I think you have 4 numbers to pick from. And each number means something different. A 4 means you loved it. It sparked joy. It was really great. Totally do it again. A 3 means it was positive, but it didn't spark joy. A 2 indicates that it was a negative experience. It was not positive. It was maybe disappointing. And a 1 indicates that it was a bad experience. Maybe you felt angry or disgusted or, some kind of really negative emotion. So that's 4 points. Now, to go from a 4-point scale to a 12-point scale, you first, figure out what it is on the 4-point scale. And then each of those numbers maps to 3 different numbers on the 12-point scale. So 1 maps to a 1, 2, or 3. A 2 maps to a 4, 5, or 6, and so on. And so then if you say, well, it was a 4, I loved it, right? Okay, so is it a 10, 11, or a 12? And if it was just like one of your favorite things ever, that's a 12, and so on and so forth. And the advantage is that at every point, you're only picking between a few different numbers, and so it's very easy to reason about. Whereas on a 10-point scale, you have so many numbers, it's hard to even know what to do with them. It's not clear that everyone's using the same system, if they even have a system. If I say a 3 out of 10 versus a 2 out of 10, what's the difference? They're both bad. And so that's essentially the pitch.
Well, but doesn't that mean even less on your scale?
Wait, yeah, isn't 12?
Because you have 12.
I do have more numbers. If I say it's a 4 out of 12, I can describe very specifically what that means. First of all, it means it was a 2 out of 4. So it was a disappointment. It was a negative experience. And because it was a 4 out of 12 rather than a 5 or a 6 out of 12, it means it was on the low end of a 2 out of 4. If it had been any worse, it would have been a really bad experience. It would have conjured
But not
emotions.
as bad of an experience as a 1.
Right. A 1 would have been emotions of hatred or disgust or anger, but because it was a 2, I didn't feel those emotions. It was just a disappointment, but it was pretty bad. As far as disappointments go, it was about as bad as it could be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think couldn't you just keep expanding that? You could make 24-point scale and just add another one. You're just fractaling down into the specificity of the way that you rated your, you know what I mean?
In your opinion, would a 24-point scale provide the correct level of granularity?
No, I think 10 is fine.
I would argue 5 is fine most of the time.
In that
But-
case, so can you describe what each number on a 10-point scale means?
Yeah, 1 means total garbage, almost unwatchable. 2 means I'm glad you did it, buddy, but don't expect anybody to watch that ever again. 3 is like, they tried, but, at least they tried. 4 is like, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. 5 is like, you know what? I watched it. I forgot about it. It's fine. It kind of doesn't exist. 6 is like, I watched it and it was decent. I had a good time. It's fine. 7 is like, I really liked that. That was good. I liked that. 8 is like, wow, that kind of blew my mind and made me think about stuff, and I've really enjoyed it, and I was totally enthralled. 9 is like, that might be the most amazing thing I've watched so far. I might need to watch it again and try and figure out what's going on in my head, because I need to just like rethink what I just watched. And then 10 is like perfect. So I almost never give anything a 10 because there's no perfect movie.
I will say that dare I say I'm agreeing with John more now?
What?
Because, okay, so you said that, and I was like, shit, that is an arbitrary ranking. And then I was like, okay, if there's at least, it doesn't necessarily have to be 4 and 12, but I do like the idea of like, these are what these mean, and then we can expand on it to make it more complex. Like, if you rate something above, like...
Because a 3 is a 7. 3 equals 7.
See, that's where I
4
lose it a little.
equals what? What does 4 equal? 4 equals
A
10.
4, a 10, 11, or 12.
4 equals 10. Look,
Seven.
we're doing toilet paper math right now. That's all I'm saying. 3 equals 7. You get the rolls. They're like 4 equals 12.
Couldn't it just be like you know what this is? This is just the grade system. Like A, B, C, and D, and then an F is like through the floor. Like
That's true.
fail like that. You like F is that, but like with A, B, C, and D, you can get like an A plus and an A minus, and then a B plus and a B minus. So like,
you just want us to use school grades on movies. That's what it is.
but
I
I get it though, because it's like when. For me, I think it's the numbers are tripping me out. So it would be like, but I do get the like if it's from a 10 to a 12, that means it's like really really good. But like how good on that scale? So I get it,
Yeah.
because I'm a complex rater too. I like want to have like the exact, like I would argue I would probably do better on a percent scale from like 0 to 100% for me. I'd be
But
like,
that's a 10-point scale.
you're right. That is a 10-point scale. But I mean, technically,
Right.
it's like a 100-point scale.
Right.
But it is in
Well,
tens.
But that's the same thing. 1 equals 10, or John's system, 3 equals 7.
So in my system, it is forbidden to have like a 4.6 out of 12 doesn't exist.
Right. It's just like a 5 or a 6, like, or
Yeah,
whatever.
is it a
Yeah.
4 or is it a 5?
Yeah.
And it's really good too because to me, and it's okay if you guys, don't want to use the scale, but for me, I find it really helpful because it's also helpful because it sort of explicitly points out that you are not trying to objectively describe how good or bad this thing is. You are trying to accurately describe your emotional response to an experience. And
Yeah.
I can look inside myself and see what my emotions were. And then that guides me to the correct number. And if you come to a different number, that's perfectly valid,
Yeah. I tend to, when I have something asking me to like rate it or whatever, and it gives me like icons of like smiles or frowns and like the range, I tend to rate more often than if it's like stars or numbers. I don't know why. It just feels more true.
Yeah.
You know? It's complex.
Well, but I gotta be honest. I still don't get it. I still don't get what the point, because I think whatever scale you use is, look, I'm giving this 4 out of 7 stars, I mean, you can do the math real quick, but like, I think I get where you're coming from, but I also like, I think it's the same thing. Like, why isn't it just the same thing? Like, if
I like the idea for like our movie ratings. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's because I really cared about school, but I would be down to do a grade system. I feel like that feels better to me than numbers.
But like actually A, B, C, D.
Yeah, because like in my
So
brain,
just
like,
John's system, but school grade system.
yeah.
John, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about you divining just what we got in school as grades as a 12-point system? Do you think that's where it comes from? Or how did you get to this answer?
I don't think it came from that. I think, first of all, you have to recognize that 12 is a fantastic number. It's
I do
divisible
like
by
12. 12 is nice.
Yeah, 2
12 is a
and
good
3
number.
and 4 and 6. I think if we used 12 instead of 10 as the root of our number system, our lives would be a lot better. I mean, how many times have you had to write like 0.33333333 in, a base 12 system? It would just be 0.4, and that's it. That means 1/3, right? And so that's super easy.
There are 12 months, 12 hours, 24 hours,
These are all good points. And so, I think partly 12 is good. So I like 12. But I can't remember, honestly, when exactly I came up with this. I know it was in the past few months, but it just felt right when I figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, however you make sense of the world around you,
Yeah.
I like letters. Who knows? I like that because for me, for our movies in particular, it's like if something is a C, that means it like passed, like it's entertaining, like it like kept me engaged. But then like a B is like pretty good, not an A, but you did good. And then an A is like perfect, but an A plus because but guys, I don't know. Like the 12-point system feels for you, the A to F system feels right for me.
And I just like out of 10.
And he likes out of 10. Maybe we'll just have
Just makes sense.
maybe for every movie we'll do all 3. We'll have Tim's score, Tori's score, and John's score, and everyone will be confused.
I really like the idea that you two are rating it on separate scales.
You just can't compare them.
Yeah, for our movie today, I definitely want to rate it on a scale from 1 to 12, but
Okay.
You guys are free to rate it as you
We'll
like.
all do our own.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll do it. Do you want to ask him the other question?
Yeah, so I'm curious from both of you, what it was like growing up with each other. Like your question, what was it like growing up with Tim? I've heard some things about Tim, not bad things, but you more so that you were this like kind of enigma. So
Well, John.
yeah.
John was there. Let's see what John has to say.
Tim, I want to hear your input about John too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a blast growing up with Tim. I'll say that first. When we were really young, he was I mean, he's always been 2 years older than me. But when we were really young, I was kind of his shadow and would always want to like copy whatever he was doing because he was basically the coolest kid on the face of the planet. And and even throughout like high school, I would still like copy him. If he had like the Padawan braid, I got a Padawan braid, and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I was always like, I just thought he was super cool. And I think every time we like talk about these stories, you feel embarrassed or something. So I'm sorry, but I feel like you would always tell me like just completely false things to mess with me. And I look back on those memories with fondness. Like, like I remember like, okay, like just really basic. Like I remember at one point I was complaining because I was younger than you. And I'm like, it's not fair. I'm always going to be younger than you, Like I should get a chance to be older than you for a little while, And you were like, well, if you just stand outside in the cold, you will get older faster than me.
When was that? How old were you?
I was like,
I love it. I love it. Oh.
Yeah, like there was a time when, and I don't even remember, like little boys growing up, you notice that your butt is like super white, right? Because it never sees the sun.
Of course.
And he was like, well, like there was this one kid in our school and his butt was like as white as yours. And everybody in school, like, made fun of him and he had to like transfer because he was so embarrassed. And they called him Ghost Butt,
Ghost butt.
I vaguely remember Ghost.
Oh my god. That is so funny.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
You don't even apologize. Like those are like cherished childhood memories.
Yeah. I had my best friend lived with me for a while, and she was basically my older sister, and yeah, I think like 2 years older than me, and she did the same shit all the time. It was just making stuff up and like wouldn't let it go. Like she knew how to like push my buttons, and she just like for days and days I would be like, I know you're lying, and she's like, I'm not, like I'm literally not. And like we didn't have a lot of parental supervision, and so she would just like bully me. The best way possible. But oh my god, yeah, the older sibling thing, I don't know what it is with you guys are just
I think it's just part of our job. I don't know why.
just
But
torturing us,
yeah, I
Just
did.
being younger than you, I feel like kind of tortures you in the same way, like we're kind of annoying to you a lot of the time, not in a bad way, but
No, I mean,
just
that's just how it goes.
younger
That's why you,
sibling.
and that's why you need siblings to grow up, but make you a more rounded person, Because I do totally remember just messing with John all the time. So, but yeah, growing up with John was never dull. Because John didn't see the world like everybody else. John is so smart and so like snappy and creative, and just you'd be like, John, where did that come from? And you'd just be like, what are you talking about? But like it made sense.
Like the 12-point system.
Like the 12-point system. And also just like John was always like crafting something. He's either like drawing all the Pokemon or like, he's like working on something, getting something done. Actually, when we were kids, we switched, I think, because you were much more of a gamer than me as a kid, because like the GameCube was kind of like yours, sort of, and like, I mean, it was just yours, right? Was it supposed to be like for us, or was it just yours? Because you unwrapped that thing and loved it.
I think I got it for Christmas because the year before I got a Christmas gift that I hated from that grandma, and she felt so bad she gave me a GameCube the next year.
Oh no.
And then I cried again, but this time it was because of happiness.
Yeah, no, that's the picture I always remember, is you holding the GameCube and crying.
I cried too.
But yeah, you're always playing Paper Mario and stuff. You were a gamer when we were kids, and I'm a gamer now, so we switched. I found that super interesting.
He's a gamer. Do you play any video games?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't know what it is, because at different points I kind of realized, like, I don't play video games anymore. That used to be really fun. I should try to play some more. And then I would do it, and I I don't know. It's like the magic was gone. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome that you enjoy video games and have a ton of fun with that. But yeah, like, I don't know, something like broke in my brain. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, that's so interesting because I just got what you lost or whatever. Because I do remember. I don't like think. I'm kind of realizing it right now. As I was never like, oh, John was a gamer when we were kids. Like that's like a main thing about you. But I'm thinking back now at all the stuff. I'm like, yeah, he was. He was a gamer, dude. Because especially like Paper Mario and doing all that stuff. Totally remember that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was fun, and sometimes I feel bad for all the times I bullied you, but
It's just
it's all
part
good
of the
looking
game.
back, you know.
Yeah, honestly, like it. I know that you said too that those are like fond memories for you, and like same for me. It's like at the time there were things that she would do, and actually like so I was the youngest out of all my friends and all my siblings and everything, and so like and my cousins, I was the youngest out of all of them, and so I just got shit by all of them. They would all mess with me. They'd all lie to me. They'd be like, this club's for 10-year-olds and older, and I'd be like 9, and I'd be like, I hate you guys. Like, you know, it's just but yeah, like them, you know, messing with me and everything are definitely some of the fondest memories I have, you know. And yeah, they feel bad. They're like, I'm so sorry I did that. And I'm like, honestly, like there's something nostalgic about it, you know, because it's like you mess with the people you love, you know. So
John, do you remember the competition that we did at the White House that first year where I was in 5th grade and you were in third grade? And
With like riding our bikes and stuff.
yeah, we had to like run. We had to go do something. It was like a triathlon. We had to run around the house like a few times, bike, and then the first one to get back won, and you won, and you kicked my ass. Do you not remember this?
I didn't remember that I won. I remembered that it happened.
Okay, well, I remember that you won because I was fucking devastated. I was like, no way my younger brother just kicked my ass that hard in this competition. And I was like, I had a moment where I like broke my like small fragile ego as a child. You know what I mean? Like, and I remember just being like, I have to get over this. And we have to figure this out because this is not cool. Or dad said that to me or something. But,
oh my God.
but yeah, you won, and you handedly won. It wasn't close. Like you won, and I couldn't handle it. And I was like,
what
so
was
good.
this for?
We as kids playing games, mom and dad set up this thing, and
Oh, you said the White House, and I was like,
we called it the White.
the
Didn't we
White
call it the White
House?
House?
I was like, what the hell are we talking about? Got it.
I don't remember us calling that, but I remember the house you're talking about.
Got
right.
it.
Yeah.
So
See,
not,
he knows.
not the actual.
Do you think
Right.
we were doing a competition at the presidential?
Not at the White House, but I was like, maybe because like, you know, back then like Michelle Obama was like fitness, so I thought maybe it was like a
We were not at the White House in
no,
Washington.
not at the
Okay.
White House.
I don't
Jesus.
know. All right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, like, never mind. It's not important.
Okay.
I bet the listeners are thinking the same thing I am right now. So it's whatever. Oh man. And before we get into the movie, tell us about your wife. Who
my
is
wife,
she?
yeah.
All about her. If she wants us to talk about her.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm at liberty to say. I know sometimes, when people are talking publicly on the internet, they like to keep their family and spouses out of it unless they've been, they've given permission. So I'll just say that I have a lovely wife, and we've been married for 3 years, and it's a really great time being married to her.
Love that. Love that.
So happy for you.
Any marriage advice you'd give to who will be soon-ish?
Yeah. I think the big thing that I had to kind of like figure out in life in general, I think, but it definitely applies to marriage, is like I have a mind that is very focused on winning, I guess. Like I'm always trying to figure out how to optimize and how to get like the best thing and how to get the best thing for me, right? And so I would make a great capitalist, but you kind of have to turn that off when you're like engaging with actual human beings that you want to have a good relationship with, and focus on how do we win instead of like I win. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's, what is it, like jujitsu?
We can win. I've been letting her win the whole time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. No, I'm kidding. No, there's been times where I'm like, don't just let me win. Like, in like games and stuff.
Oh,
I've
no.
been like,
no, yeah.
and I'm like that in life, but.
Well, I made a joke. Were you done with your point?
That was the gist of it. Yeah.
I cut you off.
No, yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah. Well, do we want to talk about the movie? What do we want to talk about? Do you want to share any embarrassing stories about me, or what do we want to do?
I mean, normally, like with the movies now, we just kind of like start talking about it, and then normally it doesn't stay on the movie. We just kind of like go wherever, and of course, like always, major spoiler alert to anyone listening. We don't hold back on any spoilers or anything like that.
We told you last week what we were watching, so if you don't know, you know.
Yep.
It's Cloud Atlas.
It's Cloud Atlas. We're going to read a little synopsis real quick so people know that we're not... How do you spell that word?
Episodes I've listened to, I'm like, I am very piecing together the story right now just from your description. So, okay.
So it stars Tom Hanks, Halle Berry, and Jim Broadbent, and they take on multiple roles in an epic that spans 5 centuries. An attorney harbors a fleeing slave on a voyage from the Pacific Islands in 1849. A poor composer in pre-World War II Britain struggles to finish his magnum opus before a past act catches up with him. A genetically engineered worker in 2144 feels the forbidden stirring of human consciousness, and so on. As souls are born and reborn, they renew their bonds to one another throughout time. And it's directed by the Wachowskis.
Yep.
All 3 of them. There's 3. Lana, Tom, and Lily. Well,
Tykwer is Tom.
Huh? Oh.
Yeah.
That's not a Wachowski. That's a different guy. Tom Tykwer.
Yep.
He directed it also.
Yep.
Yeah. So, John, you kick us off. What'd you think?
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts about this movie.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, first off, I'll just start with my rating of it, and that'll kind of give you a context, right? So
12-point scale coming in. What we got?
Exactly. So I rate it as a 4 out of 12, which is not good.
4 out of 12.
Yeah. So
did you listen to last week's podcast? You know, this is my favorite movie. One of my favorites.
I'm sorry.
You're about to totally shit on it? Go ahead. Go for it.
I'm shocked. I want to know.
I want to hear it.
Let me, describe it. Because again, remember the rating is based on my subjective emotional experience, right? So
yeah,
the first 30 minutes, after like the first 30 minutes, I wanted to turn it off. I actually paused the movie and we took a break and it's not because it was like poorly done or anything like that. It was because I enjoy being entertained by a movie, and I do not like gore at all. And there was a lot of gore, a lot of
there was
kills,
there was?
Guys getting thrown off a balcony and people, doing obscene things that I don't want to describe into a microphone. And
what was the first 30 minutes?
It was sort of setting up all the different scenes, and
it covered everybody's story real quick.
Yeah.
And then it started going into
And the big theme, I mean, there's a few themes in the movie, but one of the big themes seems to be this idea of, they have a quote towards the end that, just really felt like the writers were underlining with a theme. But it's something like, the weak are meat and the strong do eat, right? Basically this idea that it's a dog eat dog world out there. And if you are not going to win and take what's yours, somebody else will. And you're going to get screwed. And so, and I think that's an interesting theme to explore, but it was just not like emotionally pleasant for me to watch people screwing each other over and being equal, basically. And so that's what led to my emotional experience watching the movie. But I didn't rate it as a 1 because I did feel like I really appreciated kind of that they were trying to explore something interesting, and it felt like very ambitious. I think maybe it didn't quite accomplish what it was going for in terms of really telling a cohesive story, or partially they're trying to show how these different lives that are being reincarnated have a common thread and how they're all related to each other. And I felt like they could have done more to show how the previous life affected the next life or different stuff like that. And so I felt like they were trying to be very ambitious and they could have done better. And that's sort of high level my takeaway summary from the movie.
Yeah, that is a good point about the gore. I do, I'm normally not too fazed by it, but in this movie there were parts where I was like, oh my God, because like I just wasn't expecting it from that movie. It seemed kind of more of a like spiritual kind of like existential movie, and so I was not expecting some of the scenes, like when he got his like throat cut. I was like, it like it was, and then obviously the guy falling off the balcony was like, I was like, when he was falling, I was like, they're not going to show it, and they showed it, and I was like, like again, not for me, definitely not like disturbing, but just kind of, it definitely is shocking. And if you don't like gore, it is like a lot of gore.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I didn't even think about that, but that is a good warning that there's some like intense gore.
And I appreciate because I think if you're doing gore and you're just trying to like glorify violence, I have very little patience for that.
Yeah.
I think because they were ultimately trying to tell a story about good and evil, they're trying to really jar you out of your comfort zone and get you to grapple with like, hey, there's really evil stuff that happens in the world.
Yeah.
Like, what do we do with that? How do we, like, what's going on, you know? And so it really gets you in that headspace to think about evil, because you're seeing it not just this abstract concept of like, hey, sometimes people are mean, you know? It's like, no, sometimes people, do horrible, horrible things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that I was just about to say that is, especially in this movie, I don't think it's just for shock value. I mean, it might be, but I think like all of the stuff that happens is just real life stuff. I mean, what if you just see that in real life? I don't think there's, besides maybe some of the future stuff that they did, I mean, all that stuff really happens. That's life. And I think it sounded like maybe your point. Well, I'll just say my point, and then we can go back and forth if you want, John or Victoria. We have two people to talk with now about this. But I felt like, because at the end, after the movie, Victoria's asking about the voice in his head, the little devil guy in the far future timeline, and it like, to me, it just totally represents that all of those people all had that the whole time. He's just the only one you can see it. And that's the whole point, is that the whole point of all these horrible things that happen through history, each time it's like, oh, well, we kind of got that figured out, you know? Oh, we don't have slaves in America anymore. Oh, you know, oh, we don't really stigmatize against gay people anymore. Oh, we don't do this but each timeline there's always something we're doing. And it's like the only timeline, it took until humanity was about to be extinguished in this far future timeline for this one guy to be like, you know what? No, I'm going to work with this person who's not quite like me. I'm not going to give in to my thoughts that say, take everything from myself and leave her to the ground. The strong eat and whatever. We're going to work together. And then they end up saving humanity because they're the first ones to like actually do that. Almost, it's like that's what it takes, is putting it actually to the side. Because I think each individual story was about each person's struggle with that sort of force of like, this is stronger than me, what do I do, you know? And how do I handle this, and what's this about life, and kind of like almost kind of the culmination in the future in Neo Soul. That one's like where it's almost at its penultimate of like, you know, you can't escape any of the surveillance. Like all of these like fabricants are being used, and no one treats anybody like all this stuff is, and you know, all of that, all building up until they have it causes the big accident. And then people still go right back to, we're bigger, stronger, you know, in the far future with Tom Hanks, like, we paint ourselves and we just are going to come kill you if we want, and all of that. So that's my take on all of it, sort of.
So
like the overarching.
Do you think this story has a take on on human nature? What do you think it's trying to say about human nature, I guess?
I think it's trying to say that our human nature, like you were just saying, kind of, is to win. And if we can put one over Tom Hanks' character in most of the timelines is like this thief, and he kind of is taking things and he's poisoning the guy on the slave ship, and he's exploiting the guy who shot the composer to get the room out of him and get the waistcoat off of him, and these people are, you know, exploiting each other and trying to win, but the whole point is you don't have to listen to those thoughts inside your head. You can choose to be cooperative and to work with someone and trust someone instead of feeling like you need to one up them and win against them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it was also trying to show that, you know, yeah, you're right, because I don't think I picked up until you said it on the fact that the final timeline in some ways is showing him overcoming, maybe we call it overcoming human nature. I don't know exactly. But that is it ended on a fairly positive note in that sense. But you also have to recognize that in that timeline, they also had cannibals, right? Like warrior cannibals that were just taking over. So, yeah, I think that human nature in the sense of, like you're saying, trying to win and trying to basically, screw over whoever you can get away with screwing over. I like to think of it as everyone likes to think of themselves as a good person. Right? That's definitely true. And whatever they have to rationalize to continue thinking about themselves as a good person, they're probably going to do that. Even if it's to say like, well, yeah, I'm kind of horrible, but I had all these challenges. So, you know, like, what do you expect? It's fine. I'm actually pretty good considering everything that happened to me, right? That's still rationalizing yourself as a good person. And I think everyone has a circle of empathy. For some people, some really messed up people, maybe it's just themselves. I think for the vast majority of people, it at least includes like some family members and some friends. And, you know, maybe it also expands to include your countrymen, right? Like fellow Americans or whatever. And I like to think, if you're a really good person, then it also expands to include all the citizens of the world, you know, all humans. And maybe you even have respect for animals and nature and all that stuff. And, you know, you kind of expand your circle of empathy further and further and further. And because most people can think of themselves as a good person and also justify doing evil against people that are outside of their circle of empathy because they deserve it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of my main takeaways was that that essentially it's human nature to like corruption is a part of human nature. And there's always going to be kind of a, I guess, like battle to fight. Like there's always going to be, I know, like in the first timeline, obviously it was slavery and racism. The second timeline, it was like the wealthy and the elite. Third timeline in the 70s was the government and like, you know, cover-ups and stuff, which was really popular at the time. And then 2012, I kind of saw it as like, a lot of like celebrity exploitation was happening at that time and like before that, and so kind of like the publishers, the editors, the managers, you know, all of that, like taking advantage and, you know, getting wealthy off of, you know, celebrities or just like, you know, people who get recognition. And then in the Neo Soul, you know, obviously like replicants or whatever, whatever they were called, fabricants, you know, exploiting them and slaughtering them, which was terrible. And then I think, that final timeline, it was, the lines are a little bit more blurred and it was hard to see like, what are like, you know, when society gets torn down that much, what are we fighting against? You know, like normally it's just each other at that point. It's not an establishment. And so I think, my main takeaway was kind of like, no matter what, there's always going to be a new, you know, evil to have to, have to go against. And I know at the very end in the 1800s timeline when he, you know, was like, we're going to go, basically north and like fight with the abolitionists, you know, like we're going to, you know, be abolitionists and everything. And he was like, you know, essentially like you're not going to be remembered, you're on the wrong side of history, whatever, like the slave owner. And in ways that's true. Like you're not you're not going to be remembered for those things. Like, you know, at least some people are, but in the grand scheme, like normally, yeah, like you're remembered at the time and then time just keeps going, you know, and especially in like a far, far future, like the last timeline, it's like, yeah, they don't remember anything about anything because it's so far away. And so it's kind of like, just because you're not going to be either recognized or remembered for something, like, doesn't mean you shouldn't do the right thing, essentially. And like, it's like human nature to exploit and be evil, but it's also human nature to, like, you know, almost essentially like be the hero, you know. It's like, it's this really weird kind of polarity of like, depending on the kind of person you are, how you grew up and everything, it's like one of those takes over the other. But I feel like everyone has one of those extremes, you know, like in them, where they're more like, for me, I'm like really justice oriented, and I'm like, if someone's doing something wrong, I cannot handle it. Like it makes me so mad. And then, you know, there's other people on the other side who, you know, lean towards like taking advantage of people and stuff. And so it's kind of that interesting thing. And yeah, there's something scary but comforting about like being forgotten over time. You know, it makes things feel, you know, more meaningful and important. And like, you know, I'm not going to be here forever, so I want to make the most of it. But also like, you know, it also isn't that big of a deal, so I might as well just enjoy it while I'm here, you know? Mm-hmm. So I love history, stuff like that, because it's just like, yeah, wow, like time just keeps going, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's really, shoot, I had a thought. Basically, thinking about like systems and how I think a lot of it comes down to the system that you're within and what you feel like you're going to be able to get away with, right? I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said, nearly all men, oh gosh, can I look this up real quick? Somebody else say something.
Yeah, no, it's fine if you look it up. Just don't forget it.
Yeah. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Also, the website says it's misattributed to Lincoln, so take that for what it's worth. But
well, either way, it's a great quote.
Yep, good quote.
There's also like this thought experiment of like, what if you, you know, I don't know if this comes from Lord of the Rings or whatever, but like, what if you had a ring that you could put on and you became not literally invisible, but morally invisible, and you knew that you would not be held accountable by anyone, not by God, not by nothing, for all time, for whatever you do while you have that ring on. Mm-hmm. And maybe, you know, maybe at first you wouldn't really do anything with it. Maybe you would just get away with like a little something. Mm-hmm. And then you would get away with a little something more. And then eventually you would get to the point where you were just doing horrible, obscene things. Why? Yeah, makes me feel good, you know? Yeah. And it doesn't, I never have to feel guilty or bad because, you know, I have this superpower, right? And so I think it really does, you know, you're saying some people are maybe more bent towards justice and other people are bent towards corruption. And that may be true, but I think a lot of it just has to do with what situation you've been put in, what privileges you have, and, you know, what ability you have to get away with stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you kind of see it with like, you know, once people get to a certain point of wealth, it's like, you know, not only can they like buy their way out of the law, but like it's almost like they start to think like genuinely it does not apply to them. And when you live in a world with no consequences, yeah, like who do you become? Normally not a great person. And it's like, yeah, it's like, as much as I think we're all sitting here and we like to think like, nah, I'd be a good one. If I became the richest woman in the world, I'd be a good one. And it's like, once you become that detached, like who knows, you know, I think it definitely has to do with your situation. And,
well, and that's the whole point of Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism. Mm-hmm. He had everything. He had the whole world. Yeah. And he still chose to do the morally correct thing and watched everyone around him not do the morally correct thing and was like, man, those guys. I gotta keep doing my thing though, because I gotta lead by example, you know. And that's like, because do you know about him, John? Marcus Aurelius?
I've heard of Stoicism.
Yeah, Marcus Aurelius basically is one of the roots of like Stoicism as a branch of philosophy. And that's basically like he was the emperor of Rome and the Roman Empire at the height of when it was like basically all of Europe and the known world. And his book, is it Memories or Memoirs? I can't think of the name of the actual book. That he wasn't trying to write a book. It was literally his notes. It was his journal to himself, where he's basically just like, I got to do the right thing because that's what you're supposed to do. And I'm not going to let being the most powerful man probably in most of history ever bother that fact. And literally almost no one now could even come close to the amount of power that he actually had, because he could just tell people do this and they had to do it. Like that was his whole, he owned the Roman Empire. He was the emperor and he still chose to be morally upright. And that's like the whole point. And so, yeah, it's like, it'd be very hard. So somebody can do it. One person, there's evidence that one person did do it. But it's very difficult.
Like, to what extent that guy just had like a really good PR team,
right?
Versus like, actually being perfect. Like
he was just a great writer, and like it just he was just like
he's like all these other guys. I mean, you're lucky you have me as a ruler, because those other rulers, they would have been jerks.
Just a massive narcissist.
Yeah, well, it could be, but I think from people the people that I've heard talk about him, it's fairly sound history that he was that guy, basically, because the way that his book is, he was not trying to write a book. He would be embarrassed if we knew that we read his journal,
his diary,
because that's the whole point. Is he's like humble bragging in his journal, because it's difficult. It's really hard to do that, and he's like kind of encouraging himself, like, but you got to keep going. And so like he would be embarrassed to know that everyone knows that he even thought that, because his whole goal was to follow the philosophy of the moral precepts. So, and even if it's not true, it still stands as like, could you still be the king of the whole world and follow your moral guidelines?
Yeah. Well, and I know in Cloud Atlas, I wish they would have, like, my main gripe was with the like devil kind of guy that followed Tom Hanks' character around. I was like,
it was corny, right?
Yeah, I was like, what is that about? Mainly because I like the idea, because it really is it's the shadow that everyone has. It's just a matter of how much of it you like hear on a daily basis, because like I think for me and probably both of you guys, like I would really have to think hard about like what, like there's, I don't know, I have quite the filter on like that kind of like shadow part, I guess. And so I think because they put him in this weird costume, and like because it never, like it didn't really hit the way I think they were intending, and obviously it's up for interpretation what they were even intending. But it felt way more theatrical than it needed to be, and the way that he was like whispering to him and stuff, like I really liked the concept, and I liked the idea of like everyone has that, and like we're just seeing his and all of that, and he's actually ignoring it, and how sometimes it feels almost impossible to ignore and stuff. But yeah, I couldn't help but think, because it did look like it I don't know, it had like this essence of voodoo to me. It gave me like a voodoo vibe, and so I was like, did he like make a deal or something? Like, because he was so done up in like makeup and everything that I was like, is this really just someone's inner, like, is it the id or the ego that's the bad one?
I don't know.
The like really impulsive one. I can't remember.
Probably the id, but I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't feel that way. I think it would have been different if it was him saying it to himself type thing, or just, I don't know. Does that make sense? That was my like only issue with the movie, is I was like, I just don't like how they went about that, because it felt, it didn't feel, it felt like more than just his like inner demon, you know, or inner shadow. It felt like something like attached to him. At least that's like what I immediately thought of, and I was like, that doesn't really make sense, and they're not saying that, so I'm sure that it's just his like inner self. But yeah, I was just like, why was he there? Did he really need to be there? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was it.
And
I just have, for some reason.
I don't think that I interpreted it correctly based off of stuff that I read after I watched the movie. But while I was watching the movie, this is basically what I saw. He took that blue bead that was on Mr. Ewing's coat that the doctor, Tom Hanks's character, stole, right? And then Tom Hanks, as you know, Mr. Future Guy, steals it again from somebody else. And then that, like, almost immediately after that is when we see that demon, who is also dressed kind of like Mr. Ewing. And so in my head, like, oh, it's like cursed now, like the ghost of Mr. Ewing is coming back because, like, he, like, his self from way back in the day killed this man, and now that they're reincarnated like 20 times later, now he's like haunting him. And but then, like, apparently from what I read, that was like a completely wrong interpretation, and it's actually just like his conscience, like you were thinking. But I'm like, but then why did they make it seem like the very first time that we see him is immediately after he steals that bead and lets his friend get killed by this cannibal, you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, sorry, just one more thing, because I had the same thought as you, because I was like, wait, did I interpret this wrong? Because when he gets attacked by the cannibals again, it gets ripped off of his neck, and we never see the demon guy again.
Okay.
And so I was like, wait, is that why he was there?
Yeah. It really might be cursed.
Maybe. What were you going to say?
Well, wait, who rips it off of his neck? When?
When he's in the last scene where the cannibals are, where he gets his face like sliced open.
Right. You mean the scene where he changes his mind and decides to fight? It's all symbolism.
I understand it's symbolism, but like some movies, you think it's symbolism and it's literal. And so, like, when I saw that, I was like, they put a lot of emphasis on this. I wasn't sure. It was just, I wasn't sure. That was it.
Yeah, I think part of me thinks that the movie was like 2012 or 2013 when it came out. I think, which is like 10 years ago, and things can change in 10 years. So I just think that partially it was a product of maybe more of that time and what might have been more stylish at that point in movie making, because that's when Cloud Atlas came out. But I do think that it was a slightly poor execution, and very dramatic, very theatrical. And the reason for him having like that appearance doesn't necessarily help to explain who he is. Like, why does he have such a caricature type hat for no reason if he's just the evil side of your like self-conscious or whatever? It's like, but also one of the things I think about is like, was it like, where was the budget? Did they decide not to put it in making CGI for some ghostly character, or like, but I think also the way that it is kind of overdone could be poor directing, but it's one of those things where it kind of goes half and half for me, where it's like, it could be kind of poor directing, kind of poor character design, or it could be inclined to be jarring because you noticed it, where it was like, what is this? What is this weird character with this echoes and this super dramatic eye makeup going on? And I think partially my inclination is that it's to like basically make it jump out at you, because honestly the rest of the movie is like insane with the period pieces, like the 1800s, the 2012 compared to the 74, like all of the different timelines are like super distinct and well done. And then you've got this far future with Tom Hanks and Halle Berry in like revisiting tribalism, having these strange yarn fabric clothes, but like her race or her society like is super advanced and has fusion technology airships. So it's like this juxtaposition, and then there's this person who does not fit, and it's like, I just think that the whole rest of the movie is so so contiguous with the time period pieces that it just is meant to stand out to you and be like, and almost annoy you, because he is kind of annoying. And I think it's just meant to be like, this is what the whole thing's about. This is the whole thing. This is the little voice we all have.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I think like if it's, this is a very bad character. I mean, I definitely felt grossed out by him. I didn't like him.
He was creepy.
And so in that sense, they kind of did a good job at being like,
right,
you should not like, this should be jarring to you. And it was, and so that's good. I do think like, if I'm thinking of the devil on my own shoulder, right, it's probably going to want to seem as normal and attractive as possible, right? Like the devil's not going to come to you and be like, I'm this disgusting evil ghost, do what I say. He's going to be like, hey, I'm really cool, and you should get what you get what's yours.
Like more enticing.
Yeah.
And
I think sometimes
too.
It's what?
And like the devil's going to make you think that it's not a big deal. You know?
Yeah, I think, man, that makes me think of a couple things. I think the character in the movie was kept trying to like rationalize him, because I think sometimes we do that too, where we're like, I shouldn't do this, and then your brain's like, but you would live. There's no way you're fighting off all those cannibals. Your friend kind of has to go, right? Like, come on. And it's not like, oh, this is obviously the best choice. This is totally fine. It's like, yeah, this is a bad situation, but like, look at what you got to do for yourself right now. I think that partially happens too, because a lot of times you do kind of, the devil on your shoulder does want to be very appealing and want to be very, but sometimes it has to rationalize because you're not there to just be like, yeah, sure, duh, that's a good idea. You're like, no, screw that. So I kind of has to be like, yeah, but, and I forgot my other point. Yeah, so.
Sick. We talked about the devil being enticing, if that helps.
Yeah, no, I think, well, okay. I was going to say, sometimes in movies, I'll see something and I'll be like, I know what they meant, but it's not super fluid. Yeah. And I think sometimes in a visual medium, you can't go with like what exactly happens in real life, because then you won't get it. It's like you have to put the symbolism out there and be like, by the way, here's your symbolism, just so you know. Here's what's happening, and it kind of looks goofy, but you're supposed to get it. It's not supposed to be like, ironically, like we were talking about last week with musicals.
Yeah, right.
John, do you remember High School Musical, the DVD that got lost?
I remember the movie. I don't remember this DVD incident.
Oh, well, okay, so you remember Kate and Sage with Finding Nemo every day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then it was High School Musical eventually.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember that one.
Okay, well, we had a high school.
You were like, I hate this.
We had a High School Musical DVD, and the girls really liked it, and it was found behind my/our dresser, and everyone was like, Tim, you hid this. Tim, why did you hide this? And I was like, guys, I couldn't have planned it better if I wanted to. It wasn't me, but I'm glad it was back there. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
Freya keeps grabbing the cord, so I'm trying to.
Freya really wants attention right now. She usually does when we're in here doing the podcast.
I was gonna say that. So yeah, you talked about your main issues. I talked about Ghost Man. I thought he was a ghost. I was very confused.
I think he is. He's like he's whatever you want him to be.
Yeah, no. So we talked about the things that we didn't like. Is there anything you didn't like? And then I wanted to go over the things that we did like about the movie.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I don't think there's anything that I overtly don't like.
I have one more.
Yeah, I think that's why it's one of my favorite movies. And I think I mentioned it last week too, but yeah, I watched it years ago and just was like, always remembered it. It was always one of my favorites, but I don't like rewatch movies over and over, like Finding Nemo. So watching it again, I was kind of like, oh man, I hope my brain wasn't like, this movie's so crazy. And you watch it again and you're like, oh, I was going through a phase. It's whatever. But yeah, no, I was like pleasantly surprised and thinking about the movie again the next day and just being like, yeah, it's just so good. It just gets me thinking and just gets like, just like everything going. I mean, I can't really even hardly think of anything that I would just be like, I don't like, because there's stuff like with the Transformers movie, it was like basically like a slightly better than bland watch that's like entertaining for an hour and a half or whatever. But it had a couple problems, but I can't think of anything from this movie where it, like, I'd have to probably fine tooth comb it
Yeah.
to find something that I don't like.
Something that I didn't necessarily not like, but was just kind of jarring, was the race swapping. That felt...
yeah. I don't know if you can do that even today.
No. And honestly, when I saw it, the first one, was it Halle Berry was white?
Yeah.
I think that was the first one.
Yeah.
And I was like...
Halle Berry was white.
Out, and then the Asian guy who's actually a British guy in real life. Actually, I think he's Scottish in real life. I was like, also, how weird is it? Like, I was telling him, I'm like, alarm bells are going off in my head because he's in Uncanny Valley territory. Like, they tried to make his eyes like hooded, and it just like didn't work, and he kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Well, but they
I
did it
was
with everybody in that timeline.
I know.
Too.
Yeah, well, because it's in Seoul, and so they tried to make everyone, I think, Korean.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like bad or anything. I was kind of like, this is really weird, and I've never seen a movie do this unless it was trying to be like offensive, kind of like Tropic Thunder.
Right.
Like,
funny
people
offensive.
don't race swap anymore, and they didn't do it in like, it was very tastefully done, and it was done for a reason, to show like, this is the same soul, and essentially the only way they could portray that is by using the same actor for each one.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, is that like, that's the thing that I think it's kind of goofy, and the makeup obviously wasn't like perfect or whatever, and like, because of our current lives and the way everything is, you're like, different races, what? Oh, like races and cultures, and don't offend people. But I think for me, because like also the Asian actress in the main protagonist from the Neo Soul timeline, she's like red haired and white and freckled in the 1800s timeline, and the whole point is that because and like, I feel weird saying this, but both of you picked up on the comet birthmark and the one thread through all the timelines, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the whole point, is that, each of the set of actors plays a different role in each of the sets of timelines, and each of the ones with the comet is the same person through all the timelines.
Yeah.
And so like, the point is that your body changes, or like, your surroundings change or whatever, but like, that doesn't make you who you are. Who you are is what's on the inside, and who you actually are, and not like the fact that you have these type of eyes, or this type of hair color, or this type of whatever,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and like I said, I think that's the only way they could portray that is by using the same actor. Everything about you can change, but you're the same. And like, they even gender swapped that one guy.
Oh yeah. In the 2012 nursing home timeline.
Good.
That was like my favorite timeline. Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna ask what you liked and everything. So go ahead.
Oh yeah. Well, on the race thing, like I did like the message or whatever, that your race is not like a fundamental part of your like soul, in the sense that like you could very easily be born into any body or gender or whatever, and you would still be you. I like that, and I was wondering though, on what basis you're claiming that the comet birthmark indicates the same soul, because while I did think that made sense in terms of like, I was wondering if that was the case, and based on what I read, that is the case in the book. If we look at like the different timelines, we see, for example, Tom Hanks in the final timeline has this like moment of flash of recognition when he sees Halle Berry, and it goes back to when they're being like run off the road and stuff in the 80s or the 70s or whatever. And at different moments, people are like, I feel like I know you, or I feel like I've seen you before. And it seems to be that those are all mapping to the same actor, not the comet birthmark. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. For me, I think that the protagonist with the comet birthmark is always the one who's trying to like go against the grain, and it's almost like I think that that's kind of the story, is like overcoming the struggle for each of those comet birthmark ones. So maybe that's just the theme for the movie. But yeah, I mean, it's what?
Sorry. Oh no, go ahead. I just had an idea, but go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of assumed that and tried to understand the movie from that perspective. But I'm gonna admit I was a little confused because Tom Hanks' character usually is the steely one, but he's not when he's a doctor though. So that's kind of like the confusing part, because it's like that tracks for his character in the far future, in the 1800s, and in the pre-World War II, but it doesn't track when he's the, nuclear scientist. He's not steely when he's a nuclear scientist. So I think it's kind of like the role of the person who thieves or does whatever can change, like around you. I don't know. It's definitely confusing. It would take some time to weed out.
Yeah, well, I was just realizing, so yeah, in each of the timelines, the one that at least we're shown has the comet is the one that is causing change or rebelling or, basically doing something like morally righteous. So I wonder if it's that time, like that timeline is the one where their soul is basically like, I don't want to say like repenting or anything, but like, doing the right thing. So like the first one is in the 1800s, the guy who like gets poisoned and then becomes like an abolitionist has the mark. And then in the 30s, the
Frobisher.
Yeah, the guy who wrote the like
Cloud Atlas, the namesake of the movie,
and went against the rich guy and was like, no, like and it killed him. Literally was like, you're not gonna exploit me, kind of thing. Like I'm,
he didn't kill him.
Oh right, he didn't kill him. He
shot him on accident.
But
he was fine.
And then he was like, I'm gonna. He did. I'd say like. He went. He didn't just like surrender into it, and then obviously that sparked the like his lover to. Like it basically, I feel like they all kind of went together, but I'm gonna just keep going because that one's the only one where it's a little less clear of like how he improved as a person and everything. But then obviously with Halle Berry, she has the comet in the 70s, and she's the one who exposes the nuclear scientists. And then in 2012, who has the comet in that one?
2012, it's the publisher.
It's the publisher, yeah. So he basically. I told you we were doing Yeah. So he was shitty in the beginning and like exploiting that guy who shoved the guy off the roof, but then he experiences, basically being in prison and helps people get out. He, instead of backing out, goes back into the nursing home to save that other guy. Like that kind of was his arc. And then obviously I keep forgetting their names in Neo Soul. They're not replicants, fabricants. The fabricant, obviously, that was like the head of the revolution.
I think it's Sonma.
Had it. Yeah. She had it.
I think it's Sonmi.
Yeah, she changed everything, basically. And then in the like far future, it was Tom Hanks who, he ended up helping a lot of people. They ended up building an entire civilization after he saved Halle Berry's character, even though he was told not to, like in his head. So... and if you notice in the timelines, like every other character, like, so yeah, like Halle Berry's character in all of them, she's not necessarily bad in any of them, but in the 70s one, she's doing shit, like she's, basically saving the world in a way. And so I wonder if they showed us like the person with the comet, at least in the movie, it seems like the person with the comet almost has the spark of like, improving humanity. Like that spark, no matter what time period it's in, like someone or multiple people have that spark to like make things better. And then reincarnation is just a part of it because obviously like Tom Hanks's soul is in all of them, but in all of them he's bad until the very end. And then like, you know, Halle Berry's is kind of just like passive in a lot of them. You know, she's not like until the except for
So are you saying you're attributing the soul to the actual actor?
Yes,
So
but
you think the soul is supposed to follow each actor through the actual one?
yes. So I think that like Tom Hanks' soul is in Tom Hanks the whole time. It's just in the last one he's actually marked with the like comet. And so that's the lifetime where his soul is basically changing and growing and becoming a better person. Like it's kind of almost like like, does that make sense? I don't know if that's actually what's intended, but I just thought of that while you were talking about it, because it does seem like the quote unquote like main character of each storyline had the comet.
Right.
But I was under the impression, again, because they used the same actors, that the soul, well, yeah, because Tom Hanks's character at the very end, he had like that dream with all the flashbacks of all the lives he had lived before. And all of them were Tom Hanks's, like the actors' lives.
No, they weren't, because he remembered the car going off the bridge. But Tom Hanks blew up in a plane before that happened.
Oh, well, okay. I don't know.
They blew up.
That is true.
So I'm not set on a theory. I'm just trying to get all the info out there.
I did not think of it as the person with the comet had the same soul.
John, do you have any
I
further
think
insight?
that this is part of what I didn't like about the movie, is that I think if you're gonna make such an ambitious movie, there's a point where you're being like, oh, we're all really smart, and if you're really smart, you're also gonna understand what's going on. And I think there's a point where you go beyond that, and you're just like, we're just gonna try to make it confusing so that they think that we're smart. Like, if they think that they don't get it because they're stupider than we are, but they actually don't get it because we just intentionally made it confusing.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where this was. But I definitely agree that, you know, they were trying to show the character with the comet sort of basically being, trying to make there be more freedom in the world. I think the Frobisher, the guy who committed suicide, I think the story they're trying to tell there is that basically rather than be chained to his boss, he was going to free himself. And, you know, there's a line about, I would rather become my music, right? So he finishes his piece and then he commits suicide. And to which I would say, there's a lot of ways to be free, dude. Like, you could just, like, go make your own music and perform it in the street or, like, whatever. You know, like, you don't have to, like, die, you know? But
I guess, though, at the time in the 30s, like, he was saying, basically, I'm going to tell everyone that you're gay and I'm going to absolutely, like, ruin your character. And it's, like, at the time, that could cause some issues. So I kind of get it, but at the same time, yeah, like, just go somewhere else. Like, you know?
Could you not move to, like, Scotland or, like, I don't know, like, another country, maybe? Like, and I get that, you know, you shouldn't have to do that, but if your options are literally die or, like, move, like, you know, like, I feel like you could move, you know?
Yeah, well, and it kept making me sad because I was like, clearly these two are in love, like these two men, and like he's just killing himself. Like you have, like, you both love each other. Like, what's, you know, I'm like, you have stuff to live for. Well, you know, but I get why they did it, and it definitely like kickstarted the story for a lot of, like, the 70s timeline especially. So like I get it, but yeah, it just like kind of bummed me out. I was like, I feel like there's better ways for this to go down. Like, you don't need to kill yourself, man.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. It's definitely melodramatic, but he's also an artist, and that's what
a gay artist. Yeah,
he's a gay artist. What do you expect? Did you expect him to be subtle? Excuse me. So I think that's the first thing. Yeah. I think the second thing is, like, with his character, I think he was trying to make a statement. I think the symbolism of the statement that he was, like, either trying to make or whatever is, like, I'm the only one who gets to end me. No one else gets to tell me I can't be who I am except for me, sort of. And it could be sort of also that, like, if he had, because if he does just move somewhere else, he's taking the L. He's losing. He's saying, you guys win. I'm not you. It's fine that I don't have a reputation here. I didn't want one anyway. I'm gonna go lay low and be a nobody somewhere random that nobody knows who I am. He's like, no, if I can't be this, I'm the only one who can make sure I'm not this, and I'm not gonna let you manipulate me to destroy me or this or that. And so I think there is a subtle message there, but I would agree that it is completely melodramatic and over the top, especially because he sees his lover who is desperately trying to find him on the rooftops.
Yeah, what the hell was that about?
And almost coyly is like, my plan's gonna work,
I just wanted to look at you one last time. It's like, hello?
Completely melodramatic and artistic.
Yeah.
And over the top. But
yeah. I
do think there is some reasonable type of meaning behind it. But also, I would say that we could also sort of look at it like the comet was propelling change, but at the end of the 1800s one with the slave, he defies the father and says, no, I'm not going to do what you want. I'm going to do what I want. And then in the 30s, he says, no, I'm not going to do what you want. I'm going to do what I want and kill myself, and my music's going to live forever. And then, in the 70s, she's like, how does the 70s one end?
She writes a book, and it like exposes everything. Yeah. But
I think, again, it's like propelling change, but the last one's the only one where it's like, we're working together. I'm not defying you. I'm not killing myself over you. I'm not going against the whole super sci-fi neo soul network. I'm working together with you.
He defied himself, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because I think maybe the natural inclination is to think that the comet person is like the star and does the right thing in each story. And I think it's like the last one's the one that really, really matters. And it's like, yeah, they're propelling change through the story. And there's obviously other people who are really bad in each timeline. But also, that doesn't just make this person totally right because they're doing a step in the better direction, It just means that that's a step in the better direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I guess, we could look into like what's the symbolism of a comet, It can bring mass change. It can bring mass destruction if it wants to. There's the theory is that, a comet brought water to this planet. Who knows if that's true, but that's a theory. Like it can be really good. It can be really bad. Sometimes comets stick around, like Halley's Comet. It comes around every however many years, and
when we make wishes on them,
we make wishes on them. They're beautiful.
Hoping.
They're terrifying and beautiful all at the same time, and I think that they're like an unpredictable force of nature, like literally one of the most unpredictable forces. Like if it hits, it just hits and it's happening, and so I think that the person that had the comet tattoo kind of embodied that like unpredictable, like powerful but like impactful nature, so I liked that. Plus like the star in general, like symbolism of that is like, in like tarot and stuff, that's like the best card, like the like star symbolism, even in a lot of religions and stuff, it's just like, the ultimate light and like positivity, is the star. So yeah
I
don't know.
I don't think of any of that.
Yeah, see, we're all thinking of different things.
I liked too, they had a quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, I think is how you say that. They said, you only have power over people as long as you don't take everything away from them. But when you've robbed a man of everything, he's no longer in your power. He's free again. Yeah. And I kind of wonder if that's, again, looping back to Frobisher, if that's what they were trying to say, is like, you've taken everything away from him, so now, now you don't get him anymore, basically.
Yeah.
Which, I think that also goes back to the sort of Roman idea of like, panem et circus, basically bread and circus. Like, as long as you give the people food and entertainment, like, they'll be fine with you doing all kinds of heinous things as long as it doesn't affect them.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I was looking up like other quotes by this guy because I actually kind of like him. He apparently was in like Soviet Russia and was a dissident. And of course, that didn't, go over super well, it being Russia and all.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has some of the really good quotes, like, he says, a man is happy so long as he chooses to be happy, which I think is absolutely true. He has again, growing up under communism, this is a quote: human beings are born with different capacities. If they are free, they are not equal. And if they are equal, they are not free.
Yeah.
And this one feels very relevant to the movie and what you were saying, Tim. The line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart and through all human hearts. This line shifts. Inside us, it oscillates with the years, and even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, I will say my favorite thing about the movie is how like philosophical it is, and I love just like thought experiments like that, and just existentialism and everything. I really, really enjoyed that. And yeah, I liked the quotes that they used throughout the movie. I feel like they really did add to it. Yeah, I feel like there is a lot of like reflection that you can do because of this movie, and I think it's, if someone who doesn't do a lot of self-reflection is willing to like sit down and watch this movie and like really take it in, like I feel like it could be a spark to kind of, think about that. Like, I am not the only person in this world, and I'm not the first person, and I definitely won't be the last type thing, I do think that it definitely is one of those movies to spark that for people, of kind of really thinking about their life. And, if its soul was here before, or, just anything like that. I like movies that do that. Obviously, they're not a everyday watch, because it's like, especially for me, I think about them way too much. But I like what they were trying to do, and I think they did a lot of it really well, I think.
And I like how,
oh yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it sounded like you were winding down.
No, you're good.
She just keeps going. Cut her off.
Yeah.
Okay. I liked how the reincarnation bit sort of made you think about that concept of not only, because I think, right, it's very easy to do things that just benefit yourself. And there's actually this thought experiment. I believe it's called the Veil of Ignorance, but it basically asks people to imagine creating a society with a bunch of other people, and you get to decide what are going to be the rules, the laws, the culture of this society, and then you sort of hit go, and everybody sort of, their soul goes into some body within that society, and you don't get to pick. It might be the wealthiest person, it might be the poorest person, whatever. And so the idea is, what if you were to basically construct the rules of the society, not knowing if you're going to be rich or poor or anything, and hopefully people would construct a society that is, very fair and just and all that kind of stuff. And so, but yeah, with the reincarnation concept, it kind of gets you back to thinking that way and thinking, sure, this is my life now, but maybe in the next life I'll be born into a very different body. And how do I make the world a better place today, so that when that person comes, whether it literally has my soul or it has the soul of another person who's just as valuable as I am, how do I make it so that that person has a good life too?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know something for me too, kind of in the same vein, is like seeing everyone as equals, and especially people in the past. I think, we always kind of look down on people from the past, being like, we're so much smarter, we're so much more evolved, we're better at this, whatever. And in some ways that's true. Like, I'd say some of our like social structures, like racism wasn't cool, like that kind of stuff. It's like, there are ways where we have improved a lot, for sure. But people from the past were not dumb. And honestly, like, if you sat down with one of them, you probably would have a lot more in common than you thought. And even just people today, like people that you can actually talk to, you have a lot in common with, even if it might not seem like it. And something that I really liked was in the 1800s, the first timeline we see, and the far future that we see, the slaves in the 1800s and then the people in the far future both had tattoos all over the place. They had them on their face, on their body, all of that. And I felt like that was kind of just like the final, like, you know, cementing of like, we are the same. Like, you know, like something as simple as body modification will always be popular, even if society collapses and rebuilds and collapses again. You know, it's like, no matter what, it just felt like a very like visual example of like these two, even though they're thousands of years apart, like they have commonality and like similarities between each other, which I really liked. So, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had a thought and then I forgot it and then I remembered it and then I forgot it one more time. No, I think my favorite timeline might be the old people, just because it gets so goofy and out of hand.
It does. It's so funny. It's good comedic relief. I know. Yeah. Yeah, really good comedic relief for all the seriousness.
Seriously, though, I think with this movie, I think one of the things it does really well is sometimes you get a movie that's too on the nose, and they're like, hey, give me your hand. Actually, give me both your hands. We're going to drag you through the plot. And, like, everything's happening. You're like, that was so obvious. That was really obvious. Okay, now this is happening. Okay, cool. This is great. Yep, that's the goal we've been working on the whole time. And, okay. And then, like you were saying, John, I don't think necessarily that this movie does it as much as, like, is unacceptable. But I know what you're talking about, where they get too artistic, too creative. And they're like, well, we can't just tell them because they have to pick it up, because like that's what real art is. And like a lot of times people will fail and then you're like, that doesn't mean anything because there's nothing, and it could mean everything, and it's kind of an enigma and whatever. Like In the Earth didn't give us enough, didn't go anywhere. That's our baseline for, on my scale, a 1 out of 10. And just like not good. You tried to be too artistic, obviously didn't work. But I think this movie, like just like the sections where there's so many sections where they're all doing the same thing in their own timeline, and it passes from one timeline to the next sort of, and like it's just so fluid, and like just like the mirroring, and like I feel like there were a couple moments where they do kind of like either say a quote like that, or they'll say something kind of obvious of like, everything is happening like this, and you're kind of like, yeah, okay, but like it almost, in my mind, it's like it has a very good blend of this is the timeline, this is the plot, this is what's happening, and like what is happening. This is just symbolism, and it's dialogue, and it's art, and you get to figure out what it means, like that's like the point of art. It's like, I find personally it strikes a good balance between the two. It's like, this can be up to interpretation. What is this ghost devil bowler hat guy? And like, this timeline, we know exactly what happened. It's very obvious, or whatever. But yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And so for you, it was a 4 out of 12.
4 out of 12.
Oh yeah, we didn't even agree. What's yours?
Mine, I'd say mine is a B+. I think it definitely, I really enjoyed it, and overall, I think there's no denying it was like beautifully filmed. The progression of the stories was super impressive. I really enjoyed the jumping back and forth. It felt, it was super engaging for me. I really enjoyed I like movies where for the first like probably like hour, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I love movies like that. And so I was like, I have no clue what's happening, and I am so down for it. And like all these plot lines are being built up, but none of them are finishing, and they're all like going back and forth. And I was like, I am here for the ride. And it was really well shot. I mean, the actors were great. I think it really showed Tom Hanks's ability to play so many different people. When he walked up as the guy who shoved the guy off the balcony, I was like, oh my God. I was like, I've never seen him in a character like that.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was it felt very natural. It didn't feel it felt honestly, all of them, it felt like they were playing those characters really well, even though they were playing like 5 different characters at certain times. I can't remember his name, but the guy. Well, it's your review. You finish. Oh, I mean, there was a lot I really liked about it, and the only reason I didn't give it, like, I was thinking an A- or a B+, and I think the only reason it's a B+ is because there was enough stuff that had me kind of questioning or kind of being like, I didn't really like that, or like, you know, the like demon dude, it just like really got to me, and I was like, I really do not like how they did this. Like, it's just a personal preference, but it really bugged me, and not in a good way. Not like, oh my god, this guy's so disgusting and annoying. I was just like, this makes no sense to me. But yeah, there were just a few things that had me questioning enough that it did take me out of the movie. I was like, it was, I get being up for interpretation, but there's other things where I was like, did you even know what you were doing here? It personally, because like John said, sometimes it does feel like movies are just trying to mislead you and they don't even really know where they're going.
Yeah.
You know, and so...
No, that's anything Ryan Johnson makes.
Right. You got beef with Ryan Johnson. But yeah, so that's the only reason I didn't put it in A, like, as an A. It's a B+, because it's so much about it was so great, and it was super engaging and filmed beautifully. Like, all of that was so good. Yeah, just the story kind of fell flat in a couple places for me, so that's why it's a B+.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Knives Out is the perfect example for me, by Ryan Johnson. Have you seen that movie, John?
He is so mad about Knives Out. I feel like I need to watch it now so I know.
Knives Out is a 3 out of 10. Knives Out is like, it's just so, I mean, that's the perfect one where it's like, I'm going to be super smart and subvert your expectations. And it's like, no, you just kind of didn't make a good movie. But
but that's your opinion.
And that's why we all are allowed to have our own opinion.
Because I know. But you said like arbitrarily it's not a good movie. At least that's what it sounded like.
From Knives Out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, my opinion is that it is arbitrarily not a good movie.
Right. Got it.
You mean objectively not a good movie?
That too.
Objectively.
Sometimes that
Objectively.
too.
We mixed that up in another podcast the other day too. We were like arbitrarily versus objectively.
I was going with whatever you were saying.
Whoa.
It's all your fault.
All right.
No, I also don't know that it's objectively bad because I just looked it up. It scored 97%.
People
on Rotten
love it.
Tomatoes.
Knives Out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I said that. I was like, that's your opinion. That is not true because, I mean, like, I've heard from a lot of people that it is, like, a really good movie. But, again, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's just like, you love Cloud Atlas. He thought it was a 4 out of 12.
That's all. I know, but billions and billions are served at McDonald's. That doesn't make it good food.
We just had McDonald's tonight.
It's not good food.
Literally, I have proof.
It's not good for you.
Okay.
I will say, Tim, hearing you discuss this movie makes me like it more. That is
What, Cloud Atlas?
Yeah.
Thank you. And see, I can prove why Ryan Johnson is full of shit objectively. Okay, so we can go there on the next podcast, guys. We'll have John back. We'll all watch Knives Out.
Honestly, that should be another movie that we all watch to review because, I want more input.
You should have me back sometime. Like, it doesn't have to be soon, but we should have me on for a movie that I like at some point.
You can pick one.
100%.
You can pick one. Maybe we'll just have this be a theme. You could pick one, we'll watch it, and then maybe Victoria will pick one and watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. Well, my movie pick. I need to review the movie now.
Yes.
9 out of 10, easy, all day, across the board. I think one of the main thing that I like about it is, like I was saying, the period pieces are really well done. Like each of the periods, the way that they're set are so well done. They're very distinct. You know what timeline you're in. They did a really good job with that, which is just like set and setting and acting. And the actors were really good. And all the different characters that they all played are just fun to watch and really, really dramatic and thematic and just super artistic and fun. And I think like the line between, you know, Finding Nemo, we need to get my son, we got my son, we came back home, what a great time. You know, this movie is not that. It's like where it's the line between like, we're going to tell you just enough and then we're going to leave just enough up to your imagination to fill in the blanks. And I think it rides that line between being a statement piece and just being a piece of art that doesn't necessarily even have to have a meaning. It's just we see it and then we see what we see in it. And I think it allows you to do that if you let it. So I think those are some of the reasons why I like it so much. Obviously it's not perfect, but I think I am very forgiving of the movie because I feel like their execution was up to a level where I feel like I understand what they were going for, like with the devil guy. So like I'm not like held up on the way that he's dressed. I understand what his role is, and I get captivated in his role and in the scenes with him. And so I can forgive the fact that he's kind of fucking goofy.
As you were talking, there was just one thing that I thought of that I really liked with how well all the stories kind of, not that they tied together, but that they just all were like executed so well on their own. And that there wasn't necessarily like a resolution in any of them. It like, what I liked is that there was inherently, like things ended up okay in the end for all of them. But you as the viewer were like, man, they don't know what's coming in the next one. Like, they don't know what's gonna happen to the world by the next timeline, like,
right.
Because when you're alive and you're in this world, it's like everything feels so major and important and big. And it's like at the end of the day, like in 50 years, it's like there's gonna be much bigger problems, like, that kind of thing. And I did kind of like that. It was like, technically there's this happy ending in this story, but that's not how life is. It's like things are constantly happening, good and bad. And I just really liked that and there was
can I finish real quick?
You weren't done?
No.
Oh my god.
9 out of 10. But also, I just wanted to say Hugo Weaving is a really well-known actor, but I feel like he plays a lot of the evil roles a lot of the time. And he was the devil guy, and he played the mean old lady who works at the nursing home and stuff. He just does such a good job at doing his job as an actor. And I feel like sometimes I just wanted to shout him out because sometimes people like that, you don't necessarily notice them because they fit in so well with what they're trying to achieve. And I felt like he had maybe the most diverse amount of roles in the movie and just did amazing at everything that he did. And that he does in other movies too, but I feel like sometimes he doesn't get enough credit. So I just want to shout him out real quick because he played a lot of the bad roles in the timelines and did an amazing job at it.
Yep.
Yeah,
but
he did a good job. Yeah.
That's fine.
I do have to take issue with the claim that things were like getting worse and worse as time went on, though, because like in the first timeline you had slavery.
That is true.
At least in England in the 1830s, I don't think they had slavery anymore. I'm trying to remember all the timelines here. But anyways, so eventually you get rid of slavery, and, eventually you get rid of, at least for the most part, homophobia and that kind of stuff. And, we'll see how that, trajectory goes. And then like, I don't know. I think in the Halle Berry timeline, like Louisa Ray, and they're intentionally going to try to make this nuclear reactor blow up because then it'll make people afraid of nuclear and they'll just all spend their money on gas instead.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll grant that's pretty darn bad. And I don't know that governments are ever going to stop like screwing people over. Well, I guess that was a government. But, so I don't know that big, powerful companies are ever going to stop screwing people over. And then, so I think, and also like New Soul is just kind of weird, and that maybe is worse, but I think that I saw the trajectory generally being positive,
Mhm.
although I can see that maybe it's more mixed.
Yeah, when I said it got worse and worse, I was like, yeah, but slavery was the first one we opened with,
Yeah.
so no. And then as I thought about it more, I was like, maybe just more like threats to humanity as a whole. Because once it got to the 70s, it was like, oh, like nuclear stuff, because that is when things started being like, we could destroy the entire world with this.
Hmm.
And then with the fabricants, it's like that's a whole other, debate of like what makes a human at that point and all of that. And like we're slaughtering these things that like, are they human? Are they not? Like very morally gray area. I think maybe that's it, that it felt like it got more morally gray to me over time. And for me, that's scarier. But
And I think
Yeah.
it's
yeah,
crazy, like how you have these fabricants, right? And after 12 years, they retire them basically,
right.
and they kill them. But they kill them literally. Like they have these employees whose whole job is to just be calm and happy and oh, sit right here, and this is gonna be a normal thing. We're gonna do this, and then bam, they're dead, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you even have that job and not like go crazy, right?
Right.
Because even with the Nazis, right? Like they put people in gas chambers. They didn't like manually kill all of them, right?
Hmm.
Like, and I would just think you can't have that job and not go crazy. And I
Right.
think like you, yeah. So, anyways, I thought it was interesting, and it is kind of going back to slavery in a sense, right? It's that idea of who counts as
Yeah.
Yeah.
human or worthy of having rights. And I'm sure they would all justify it as like, oh, well, they're not humans. They're like robots, basically, you know.
Hmm.
And they would say like, well, they're not acting like they have free will. They're acting like they're perfectly happy the way they are.
Hmm.
But it's also because it severely restricted what they had access to. And we saw that even when they had just a little bit of access to like outside world, they started to like think for themselves more. And so, yeah, it's fascinating. I don't know that we're ever going to actually have like fabricants or, things that can think for themselves. But I know that it is something that people it's always in fiction that surrounds that kind of stuff. And so
Hmm.
I have to think that we're going to think about it. We're not going to
Yeah.
have like, I would hope we're not going to have something like fabricants for 100 years. And then finally they rise up and revolt because they're just so fed up with being our slaves. Like
Right.
I feel like we would notice if they become sentient, I hope.
Yeah. Well, and I guess in the same vein, even the issues, as crazy as it sounds to say today, but I think slavery and racism and even homophobia in the 30s was much more morally gray at the time than
Mhm.
for us right now. Like for us right now, we're like, yeah, no, that like absolutely not. But at those times, just how society was and cultures and everything, to the oppressors, not the oppressed, but to the oppressors, it did feel a lot more morally gray, I'm sure. Kind of like with us with replicants and or fabricants, as bad as that sounds, it's like at the time, like black people weren't seen as human, like to a lot of people, which sounds awful,
It sounds insane. It sounds
but
mentally
that's
insane.
how it was. And so because people were conditioned, it did seem like much more of a morally gray, issue. And then just hindsight's 2020, and you could argue that it was never right, and of course we know now that is absolutely the case. But that's not the reality of the time. And so yeah, as much as I'm like, yeah, the fabricants thing is really a weird moral area, it's like I think people have always felt that way about whatever issue was at hand,
Probably.
that yeah, they're like, yeah, like with gay people, I think there were plenty of people out there that were like, yeah, I support this, but there were also plenty that were like, this is a crime, whatever. Like it's just everything I feel like always has that.
And I feel like it's interesting to think about too, like 50 years from now, what are going to be the things that we look back on and we're like, those people were evil,
Right?
like, because I feel like I mean, first off, the fact that most people are not allowed to come to America, right? Like if you are like super poor in some faraway country, like you're just not allowed to come here unless maybe your country is at war or something like that. And do you realize like how much more wealthy they could be if they were here, even if they got no government assistance, nothing, just being like even a homeless person on the street in America is going to set you up for like success better than, you know, being in certain situations, right? And I think there's a lot to be said. I'm like tangenting now, but there's a lot to be said for money is not happiness. And, you know, like I don't want to imply that like anybody who's not in America, their life is horrible or anything like that. But I think we should have, you know, like if not open borders, almost open borders. I think that the way we treat animals is horrible. You know, like I'm not a vegetarian, but I probably should be. Like, I don't know. I just, if you know, like what happens to the meat before you eat it, like it's horrifying.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I feel like there's a ton of different things you could look at, you know, the way that we treat people who have drug addictions, right? Like putting them in jail instead of like getting them help, you know, like you could just rattle off like probably a dozen more things off the top of your head. And maybe those will be thought of as horrible 50 years from now, or maybe it'll take 500 years. Like we don't know, right? But it's
Well, and I always think of it's going to be something we don't realize right now, because those are all things you can realize right now. I bet it's going to be like they didn't realize that iridium matrix 4713 was in this type of ink that they used on everything, and it got in their bloodstream and changed their DNA, and like it's going to be something we have no, and we're just going to be painted to be these stupid people because we had no precept of this infinitesimal thing that we had no idea of, or something like that, you know? Because like they used to put lead in gasoline and paint, and they were like, yeah, it's lead, like what do you want? And then now we're like, oh no, it's horrible for you, they didn't know that, you know? And so I think it's gonna be something, I think that type of thing is something we just can't even, because we always want to know. I do the same thing as you, John, because I do the same thing. I'm like, it's the plastic in the bottles, which we kind of already know about or whatever, you know? It's like
the microplastics,
it's the microplastics, we had no idea, you know? It's the didn't, you know,
cars.
It's what?
Cars.
Full circle. Yeah.
Full circle.
And like I saw this great comic. It was like this guy, I forget how exactly it plays out, but this guy comes back from the past and he's like, his friend is like, did you tell him? And he's like, yeah, no, I told him. They didn't care. Right? Just like about like the climate basically, right? Like they're like, yeah, we know. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some stuff you're just like, yeah, we know. But yeah, I always wonder that because, yeah, there's the obvious ones that we do know about. But yeah, what is that? What's the one going to be that we have, at least we don't know about yet, you know? Like, what isn't being talked about yet? I did just learn that in AstroTurf and those, like, rubber, kind of like, just basically like soft asphalt, that they sometimes put on like playgrounds and stuff, it releases a dust that causes like a ton of different cancers. Like we just learned that. And like kids, every sports team has played on AstroTurf for a long time, like all of that. Like anytime you're running on it or moving on it, it's like that dust is coming off of it and it's getting in your lungs. And I was like, it's always something.
Your aunt and uncle are gonna have to redo their whole yard,
right? Oh my god, yeah, it's crazy. Just things like that coming out all the time.
Yeah, and I think you kind of said things were one of you said things were escalating in the movie, and the other one said things were getting better in the movie. I think part of it, for me, just shows that like every timeline's dealing with its own thing.
It's good,
and we think we're smarter than the old people. We try and predict the future, but at the end of the day, we don't get to pick what timeline we're in, you know, that we know of, I guess. And we're just here, and we're dealing with what we're dealing with, and what we're dealing with right now is what's important to us because we're here, you know. And I think that's the way I always look at it. Is there's not like a moral high ground of whatever, because everybody's going through something at every point, and somebody on earth at any given point is going to be Marcus Aurelius ruling the world, or they might be the guy on the boat who's a slave and is trying to find his freedom, you know. Like we're all going through life. It's just life. And I think that's part of why I like the movie too, is it's like it kind of just weaves all these points of life. It's like, is it good? Is it bad? Where's the moral judgment? Where's the choice to do things better? And does it matter? It's all just life. We're all just living it. It's just flowing, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
That's my take. Well, John, we just hit the 2-hour mark. Did you want to say or talk about anything else before we wrap this one up?
Oh, I think I really got out a lot of the thoughts. I'm sure when I listen back to this, I'm gonna be like, "Oh, you idiot! Why didn't you say this or whatever?" But let's leave the audience wanting a little more, and next time they'll
a little more of John.
Yeah.
In months or whatever that is, we can we can talk some more. But it's also my bedtime.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're so glad that we could set all this up and have you on. And it's been a joy. And thanks for watching my favorite movie. I don't care that you gave it a 4. I'm glad that we could all just watch it and talk about it, because that's what's important. In fact, I probably love it that you didn't like it as much as I do, because that's more exciting than if we were all just like, it's great, and then we talk for 2 hours about nothing. But I had a blast having you on. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was a phenomenal experience.
Yay. Yeah, right. We're looking forward to having you back.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.